what's the proper protocol for hitchhiking? He says, after I drop you off at the Ellis to get your groceries, cross the road over here and go to that small outfitter store there and buy my sign that I made. It's pink laminate and costs $3. So I went and got one. It says, one way you want to go to town, the other you want to go back to the trail. Anyhow, I came out of the store and I was going to use it, but then I noticed there was a Dairy Queen next door. So I went and got a banana split, and then I got my sign out. And the important thing is you face the direction of the destiny that you want to arrive at. So if you have it the wrong way, you'll stand in that same spot all day. On day 9, I walked up Standing Indian Mountain, and there I met a couple from Dayton, Ohio. They were rock hounds. They had chipping hammers, and they were cracking rocks open, finding gems. So after I left them, I couldn't resist. I found a couple rocks, I broke them open, and I found little specks of red rubies. This is day 10. I'm on top of Albert Mountain. I'm sitting there really pleased with myself. I had 100 miles accomplished. But then it dawned on me that I did 100 miles, but I had to do that 21 more times. This was day 13. I woke up, my tent was covered in snow. I checked the weather report. It said it was going to snow all day long. It's going to be cold and windy. So the only way I could stay warm, I figured, was to keep walking. So I packed everything up, and I didn't want to stop to eat. I stuffed a bunch of snacks inside my front pouch, and I started walking. About halfway through the day, I came to this area, dark trees, and the wind was blowing the snow sideways. It reminded me of a snow scene from Jeremiah Johnson, if you saw that. And then at that time, I got my phone on, and I noticed I had 2 bars on my phone, so I decided I'd called up Fontana Dam Village, and I made reservations for a room 3 days from now, because it always helped me when I had something to look forward to. It ended up I walked 17.9 miles that day. That was a record at the time. I cleared off a spot and put my tent up, and the very next day it was nice, real nice. Came down out of the mountain into the Knock, which is the Nantahala Outdoor Center. I took a seat at the restaurant with a window, had lunch there, and I was watching kayakers maneuver around the rapids there. And then 2 days later, I made it to Fontana Dam. I got a room there, and this is what happens when you get a room. It's called a pack explosion. I took inventory of all my gear, had all my clothes laying around drying out, and these are things I look forward to when I ran into civilization. Appreciated civilization. Of course, I had to have dessert. The next day, I crossed Fontana Dam, and I entered the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And in the Smoky Mountains, you're not allowed to have dogs, and if you camp there, you have to stay in one of these shelters, or if they're full, you had to sleep outside of them. So this was my first shelter, and it was pretty nice. It wasn't crowded. It did not have a privy, but it had that long-handled shovel there. 2 days later, I made it up Klingman's Dome. It's the highest elevation on the trail. So I climbed up to the tower. I went to look around, but it was foggy again, so the views weren't good. So I came down. I was going to head back to the trail, but I noticed these people coming up from down below on this asphalt trail. So I said, hey, what's down there? And someone said, well, the visitor center down there. So I always crave pops, so I said, I'm going to go down and get some of that. So I hiked a half mile down there. I go into the visitor center there, and it turned out to just be an elaborate souvenir shop. So I asked the lady there at the counter, I said, do you have a pop machine? She says, every hiker that comes in here asks for a pop machine. So I hiked a half mile back up, so that was a wasted mile. The next day, it was one of those ugly days. It was cold, it rained all day. I ended up at this shelter, and it was full, and I wanted to camp outside, but there were no good spots, so I had to stay inside. The lower platform was filled with people. The upper platform just had one little space, so I put my sleeping bag up there. people were already in their sleeping bags. Two guys were having a farting contest, and everybody I looked at looked depressed. I couldn't look them in the eyes because they had this look on their face like, I just want to go home. So I stayed away from them. I went out and collected wood, but when it got dark, I climbed up in there. I tried to go to sleep, but the woman next to me, she's from England. I don't know. Anyhow, she was a deep sleeper, and her face was towards me the whole night. She didn't move, and she snored like a yodeling bullfrog. Twice I had to get up and go pee, so I had to climb down out of there without bumping into anybody or stepping on them or kicking them in the head. And one time I searched for my earplugs in vain. I started off every morning making a video, and I ended the day with a wrap-up video. And during the day, I took a lot of pictures, and I made videos, and I had to compile them into an iMovie. And then, as soon as I could, I would upload them onto my YouTube video channel so that my family and friends could keep track of me. I would call my wife once a day usually, but the important part was that everybody knew where I was, and that's how I kept in contact with them. Each one of my family members had one of these maps attached to their refrigerators, and they had a picture of my head cut out and pasted to a magnet, and they would show the progress that I made by moving my head up the map. I like taking pictures of scenery. I like waterfalls. I really like camping by water because I like listening to it at night. It put me to sleep. It was easy to make water there, and as often as I could. I never liked getting in my sleeping bag when I was sticky and sweaty, so I would rinse off. Sometimes I would go right under. I like pictures of wildflowers and trees that look like moose heads. I saw every color of fungi except blue. There were gobs of butterflies, and the flowering bushes were tremendous. There were rhododendrons, 3 or 4 different colors of azaleas, and mountain laurels. These are orchids. Every time I saw an orchid, I would take a picture of it and send it home to my wife to make her jealous, because she has never seen a blooming orchid in the wild. This is a saw-whet and a barred owl. I walked up to both of them 4 feet away, and they just looked at me, so I took pictures. And the barred owl on the top right there, he is my friend. I never minded when he woke me up in the middle of the night with his "Who cooks for you" chant. But I cannot say the same thing for whippoorwills. Oops. I like box turtles and toads and eastern newts, garter snakes, skinks, leopard frogs. And these dogs here with the saddlebags are also through hikers. They carry their own food and water. This old guy in the bottom right there, he's owned by a man named Jerry, who is a day hiker, and we all stopped at a shelter to eat some lunch or a snack or something, and he was there with this dog and a younger one. And when Jerry left with the dogs, he left us a bag of tangerines. So as we were eating those, I had given this dog a real good rub down. So a couple minutes later, this dog came back, and I gave him another rub down, and Jerry had to come back and get him. And that time, he pulled one away on a leash. Just about everybody had a trail name. There was a guy there whose tent caught on fire, and as it was melting around his gear, he was trying to save as much as he could, and in the process, he burned his hand severely. He had second-degree burns. So, of course, they named him Meltdown Wizard. I met a young couple. They're really enthusiastic. Their trail names were Here and Now. And I said, well, that's great while you're young. I said, someday when you get older, you might not be here now, it might be now and then. Then there was a guy, he was young and single, and he was having an affair with a married woman on the trail. So they called him Homewrecker. I'm not sure what they called her. Finally, Michelle Martin. early in the trail, Michelle had to go number 2 in the woods, and it was a slurry mess. And she tried to cover it up with dried up leaves with her bare hands, and then she pushed them down like this, and then she looked at her hands and she said, "Oh, shoot." That was her first mistake. Her second mistake was she went and told everybody what she had done. So they gave her the trail name. It was very similar to a Johnny Depp character in one of his first movies. They called her Edward Shitterhands. We just called her Eddie for short. This is Uncle Johnny's, one of those favorite hostels you can go to. And as the sign says, there's a free ride into town. So it was at Irwin, Tennessee, next to the Nolanchucky River. And I took advantage of these shuttles. So in the evening, we all went to a Mexican restaurant and enjoyed a meal there. And in the morning, went back for breakfast at McDonald's. So after breakfast there, I scooted over and got some supplies at Walgreens. And then I came back to McDonald's just in time. They were opening up. I got a sundae before I got back on the shuttle. But the young guy giving the shuttle rides, he always had some good stories. And he said that Irwin, Tennessee is a place where they invented the toothbrush. Had it been invented anywhere else in the world, it would have been named the teeth brush. And then there was a sad story. About 100 years ago, the circus came to town, and this abused elephant broke free and killed his trainer and roughed up some spectators. So the locals rounded it up, put him on trial for murder, found him guilty, and sentenced him to hang. The first attempt at the execution failed because the chain wasn't strong enough. But they got a bigger chain and hoisted this thing up in the air with a crane or something, and it dangled there for an hour before it finally suffocated and died. They dug a huge hole, buried the carcass, and that's the way it stayed for decades until that spot became a construction site. And some heavy equipment operators were out there digging. They found these elephant bones, and they thought they were woolly mammoth bones. So they shut the job down and tried to call in a paleontologist. But some old timer remembered about the circus. So that was the end of that story. This was my first trail magic from these trail angels. I came out into the road, and this young lady flagged me over. I went over there. They said, "Sit down in the chair." They took off my pack. They said, "We'll serve you." It was Cinco de Mayo day. They gave me tacos and cheeseburgers and beer and even some nutritional food. And so I probably had seconds, and they gave me some to go. They had hiked the trail 3 years before I did. And you can't tell because his hat's on, but I guess he has real nice hair because his trail name was Enrico Suave. She might have nice hair too, but she wasn't so lucky with her name. 800 miles left in their trip. She contracted this virus which caused violent and frequent diarrhea. She told me she'd be walking along just fine, all of a sudden her stomach would start to growl. And she had 45 seconds to decide where she was going to go. So they named her Lookout. About this time, I had a grandson that was born. He's here tonight. These are some of my favorite trail angels. You might recognize a couple on the left. They're from Bowling Green. That's Jim and Linda Kettinger. The top right is Mrs. Moose. The bottom right is Michael Tarvin. At mile 470, I'm in Virginia. This is Damascus, and this is where they hold the annual Trail Festival. And if you're there during the third weekend in May, it's very similar to a apple butter fest in Grand Rapids. And if you go up to the 500-mile mark, you end up in the Grayson Highlands, and there you walk through a rock formation called a Fat Man Squeeze, and oh yeah, there's wild ponies there too. The sign said, "Do not feed them, do not pet them, because they will bite and they will kick." Many of the mares were pregnant or already had their foals, and this guy, this celebrity stallion, was probably responsible for many of the pregnancies. His name is Fabio. The next year, I took my wife to trail days, and I brought her up here to Grayson Highlands to see the ponies and hopefully this stallion, Fabio. But when we got there, we found out that Fabio had been misbehaving, so they took him down and put him in a corral down below. So we drove down there to see him. And while we were there, we also learned that the corral railings weren't high enough for Fabio, because whenever he got the urge, he would hop over them and go visit his girlfriends. But he would come back every night and hop back in the corral just in time for supper. That's Fabio. If you look at an Appalachian Trail brochure, usually it's a nice sunny day and the trees are in their autumn colors, but and you had days like that, a lot of them, but there were a lot of days like this where it rained all the time. It was miserable. You had to watch where you step so you didn't step in the bare scat there, and some of the climbs were a bit treacherous. I learned some terms and slogans on the trail, and one was never quit on a bad day. It said, leave no trace behind, hike your own hike. There was hiker midnight, and that was when the sun went down. Everybody's supposed to be quiet. Or as I like to say, sun up, get up, sundown, shut up. The last one was, the trail provides. Every shelter, well, not every shelter, every hostel and some shelters had a hiker box. And if you had something you didn't want to carry, you would put it in that box and somebody else could use it. So there was, the term trail provides, the best example of that I heard was this guy I talked to said he was up in New York, and at that time he desperately needed new shoes. So he called ahead to this outfitter store, and he said, do you have this brand, this model, this size? And the salesman said, yeah, we carry that. Great. So the hiker ordered an Uber that was going to take him there and back for 45 bucks. But when he got there, he's walking around the store and he doesn't see these shoes anywhere. So he went up to the counter and talked to that salesman, the one he talked to, and he says, hey, I thought you said you carried what I need. And he says, yeah, we carry it, but you have to order it first. So he still needed shoes. So he's walking around the store, and he ends up at the bargain bin. And inside the bargain bin was the exact brand, model, and size that he needed, and they were $77 off the original price, so it worked out. That trail and all trails would close up if we didn't have trail maintenance people, and these guys did their best to help us out. They put in these rebar rungs on the steep parts and a ladder there, and I hope they replaced that 3-log bridge I had to go over, because that was pretty sketchy. The tops of each of my toes were rubbed raw, and the balls of my feet on both sides, I had a deep blister in there, and eventually that part of my foot went numb, and I didn't get that feeling back until a year and a half after I quit my hike, and I fell 18 times. This was day 42. It was a bad day. First thing right off the back, I started hiking, and I had to go under this brush, so as I bent over to step through it, I stepped on a curved long stick, and it came up and popped me in the eye. So the rest of the day, my eye was irritated. And then after lunch here at the Chestnut Knob, I did something just above my kneecap on my left knee. It burned, so I either tore it or I strained it. But like a moron, I had 9 miles left to go, so I kept going. And each day it got worse. I'd wake up every day hoping it would go away, but it got worse. And I couldn't lift my leg and bring it forward like I normally do, so I kept catching my toe on a rock or a root, and it would tear it a little bit more, and I would yelp. And so after a while, a couple days of that, I got a cramp in my right calf. And I said, I can't have 2 bad legs. I need some potassium. I need some banana somewhere. So I looked up and I saw there was a grocery store just down the road. So I hobbled down half mile to Trent's Groceries, and they had 1 banana left. It was sitting on the counter, and it was dark brown. She says, I'm not even going to charge you for that one. So I took it outside, and I forced it down, and it took care of my cramp in my leg, but my left knee was getting worse. So finally, on day 45, I said, I need to take some time off. So I called up ahead at the hostel in Pearisburg, Virginia. It was Angels Rest Hiker's Haven, and it's run by Papa Smurf and his wife Commando. So they came and got me, and I laid around the rest of that day, and I iced it down. And the next day, 46, with my first 0, I took a day off, and I just sat there, and it felt a lot better, but it was not nearly enough I should have stayed there. But like a moron, I started hiking again, and it continued to get worse until on day 50, I woke up, and I could not bend my leg. It was swollen up like a softball, and getting dressed in my wet clothes, especially my left sock and shoe, reminded me of, if you ever saw the movie Dancing with Wolves, and Kevin Costner put the arrow in his mouth to put his boot on his bloody foot. It was kind of like that. It was pretty sad for me. Anyhow, I got it all done. I packed up one leg, and I hobbled 2.5 miles out to the road, and there was a SUV letting these 2 German hikers out. So I flagged him down. He stopped, and it was Papa Smurf. I said, take me back to your hostel. And he says, you look injured. I should probably take you to the doctors first. I said, okay. And he said, do that. And he says, call me when you're done. So I went to the doctors, got it x-rayed, and on the way back, the doctor called and said, it's better than I thought it was going to be. If you stay off it for a week or better and just keep icing it down, you should recover. So I went back to the hostel, and I'm thinking, do I want to stay here over a week? It was Memorial Day weekend. I sure would like to go home. And these 2 guys were talking about going home, got me thinking. And the one came to talk to me. His name is Donut. He said, we're going to Roanoke. You should come with us. And I said, that sounds like a great idea. And he said, well, the thing is, we're leaving in 10 minutes. So I didn't get a shower. But the next morning, I woke up in my own bed. During that time, the only good thing was I got to meet these new snakes. This is a black rat snake. He's about 5 feet long. He's a constrictor, and some of them get over 8 feet long. This one's a copperhead. Very well camouflaged. Like to stay in the sun because he's cold-blooded. He does not have a rattler to warn you. But he and I had an agreement. That is, if I didn't step on him, he would not bite me. So I got to come home, and I went to 3 parties at home. And I ate good. I stayed off my feet the whole time. I iced it down, and I got to meet my new grandson. After 8 days off, I went back to the trail, and I met the Kefir oak. He's 300 years old. He's a white oak, and he's older than our country. The next day, I arrived at Audie Murphy's memorial. Audie Murphy was the most decorated soldier in World War II. He was a movie star after that, and then at the age of 46, the plane he was in crashed here. Later on that day, I walked by another rock formation, a real high pointy rock called Dragon Tooth. And after that, I made it out to the road and walked down to a hostel called 4 Pines Hostel. It's run by Big Joe. After I got my bunk secured, I came to see Big Joe, and I said, hey, I think I have a package here. Did you receive it? He says, go up to the house. Don't go in the house. Go in the side door on the porch there. There's a table there with all kinds of packages on it. Go in there and take whatever's yours. So I did. And when I came out, he tossed me his car keys. And he said, hey, the restaurant's about to close. Take the Suburban and these 2 other hikers and go get supper. So we drove there, and we went to this place called Home Place. It's an expansive farmhouse up on this hill. And it was all you could eat. So we got roast beef, pork, fried chicken, mashed potatoes, gravy, milk. I got seconds on everything. And then I had some kind of berry crunchy a la mode for dessert. After that, we stopped at a carryout on the way home, and I got a 6-pack of beer, and I walked up to the campfire there. I pulled one off for myself and held them out and said, who wants a beer? The next day, I walked up on top of McAfee Knob. This is the most photographed place on the whole entire trail. And while I hiked that year, I met 2 people with the same trail name, a man and woman. Their trail name was Handstand. And at this location, they did a handstand. This is another rock formation. This one's called the Guillotine. After that, I crossed the St. James River, and I went into Glasgow, and there I heard about a Boy Scout project that had a shelter house, a privy, and a shower. So I went there and made use of both of those facilities. And then afterwards, I found a seat in a restaurant there. And since it was an Italian restaurant, of course, I had fish and chips, a hot dog, and a hot fudge sundae with a double cheeseburger to go. And when I came outside, I met this couple from Ireland. This is M&M. I met different people from all over the world. There was another couple there. They're from South Africa. And his name was Springbok, which is an animal down there. And her name was Dandelion. I wish I had spent more time with them. After that, 2 days later, I climbed up this mountain called the Priest. And as soon as I got up to the top there, this storm came in, and the wind started blowing, it got cold, and the trees were swaying, and then the rain just pounded on me. But that wasn't the worst part. There was lightning zapping overhead all over the place. I could smell the ozone. And you might not think you're very religious till you go through a thunderstorm on a mountain ridge, but so all I could do is kept my head down, I walked as fast as I could, and I said every prayer that I could remember. Of course, the next day, it was nice out. There was trail magic again. I arrived at this blue tent, and they were serving ice cream and beer. So I got my full fill there, and I hiked down a half mile. I came out to the road to the scenic overlook, and there was a couple there. They were getting their picture taken. And I said, "You want me to take one for you?" And sure. So I took their picture, then I went to get back on the trail, and I went the wrong way. Should have gone. I went the wrong way, and I walked half a mile back to the blue tent again. And I almost sat down, had seconds, but I was too embarrassed. I turned back around. That's not the last time I would walk off trail. Another time, I missed a turn, and I walked forever down this rocky creek. And I got down there. I hadn't seen the white blaze for a while, so I got out my gut hook, and I looked up my GPS, and the arrow showed me I was over a mile away. So I had to climb back up that mountain, get on the trail. But the worst one was late in my hike, I was really hustling. I was trying to get to this shelter, and I knew I was going to have to walk in the dark with my headlamp on, but I wanted to go anyhow, and I was really pushing it. And so I crossed this road, and 2 miles later I came to the October shelter, and I was just going to have a quick snack and go. And there was one woman there, her name was Hoot. And after I stayed there just a few minutes, I got back on the trail, and she shouted after me, "You're going the wrong way." I was. I should have gone left. I went to the right, and I was going, and I had come out on this road that I recognized. So I had to turn back around, so that was 4 miles wasted. But I was still going to make it to that shelter, so I was really pushing it. And the sun went down, and I crossed this creek, and there was this beautiful camping spot. So I said, I'm going to stay here. I put up my tent, I went down the creek and rinsed off. I got my sleeping bag, and then the rain just came down for about an hour. So I made a good decision that time. This is Pepe. He's another celebrity. He's 87 years old. A Korean War veteran. He was trying to become the oldest man to hike the Appalachian Trail through hike. And he was a marathoner, so we exchanged stories. He said his best time was a 3:02, and I said, that's pretty good. I said, I remember running a 3:02 in a Cleveland marathon one year. And he said, how old were you when you ran your 3:02? And I said, I was 39. He said, I was 65 when I ran mine. I said, you win. All these snakes have a story. This one on the left, though, I named him Cortez the Killer, because usually at the end of the day, the last 4 miles, I would listen to my earbuds and my Spotify account, and that was a song that was on by Neil Young, Cortez the Killer. So I was walking along, and all of a sudden I heard that buzzing And I stopped, and I thought it was a cicada. So I take my earbuds out, and I'm looking around, and the branches around me, and then I look down the ground in front of me. And if I had taken one more step, we would have had an up-close and personal event. So I backed away a little bit, and I filmed him as I went by, and he followed me all the way around like this. The day I met Pappy, I met my first rattlesnake, and I started seeing bears. This one on the left coming up, that was the first one I went by. I got within 10 feet. I just had my phone going and recording it. And it's a male, so he's just interested in eating. But he put on a display of power. He jumped up and bounced off this tree and got my attention. I saw 5 bear that day. The last 2 were a mother and a cub, so I steered around them. And I spent the night at the Big Meadows camp. The next day I saw 3 more males up on a narrow ridge and got by them. Speaking of bear things, there's another tradition on summer solstice that you hike naked. I did not participate, but I saw a guy go by me, and all he had on was the backpack and the shoes. And I didn't get his picture, sorry. But I talked to a woman the next day who stood behind this sign with nothing on to get her picture taken. And then she walked 100 yards, put her clothes back on, just to do it, she says. About the halfway point is around Pine Grove Furnace, and there at the state park they have a half-gallon challenge where they challenge you to eat a half-gallon of ice cream. Big deal. I had no problem with that. So I ate that ice cream, and then I think I had a double cheeseburger and French fries there. And as I was leaving, I ran into this group, and they had hiked the deer before. We're having a reunion. And they invited me to stay with them. They had enough space, so I stayed with them. I got a free shower at the state park, and I enjoyed refreshments and snacks with them. And their trail name is a trail family, so it's a tramily. Their tramily name is Mob of Ponies. This was the day I walked the longest, the farthest. 3 times I had to cross water. Early on in the morning, this was no big deal. It was just up to my ankles. But about lunchtime, I went through one about 50 yards up to my knees was an overflowing beaver dam. And then at supper time, I crossed this narrow creek, but it was deep and running fast. And I was a little concerned about that, so I took everything off, put on my running shorts and my flip-flops, and I carried my pack over my head, and I carefully went down the side of the bank and shuffled across as the waters hit me because I didn't want to drown in that snag behind me. But I made it out, and when I crossed the road, I was rewarded with more trail magic. And as I was sitting there and enjoying the snacks, I met Jesus. Jesus sat down beside me, and he's about this tall and had long hair, and he walked really fast because after we got up to go hiking again, he beat me to the trail, to the tent site, and had his tent up before I even got there. It was a miracle. About that time, I also met this big guy, big blonde-haired kid. He had huge legs. His name is Cyclops. And Cyclops was being supported by his dad, Steve. And Steve was a trail angel, too. He gave us beer and chocolate. And the next day was the 4th of July, and I had heard down the road right away was this bed and breakfast. They had a barbecue restaurant. So I said, I'm going there. So I went down there, but when I got there, it was closed for the holiday. So I went on back, and there were 3 other hikers there, and they were stealing water from the faucet of the restaurant. So yeah, I did the same. And then this van pulled in, this guy gets out, and I said, uh-oh. Well, I said, I recognize that guy. I said, hey, Steve, it's Cyclops, his father. So he came over, and he goes, I don't know if you guys are interested, but down the road there's a gas station that has really good food, and if any of you are interested, and he didn't even have to finish it, we all 4 got in the van. He took us down, and I had fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and a submarine sandwich to go. Got back on the trail, and it started raining. I climbed up on the knob, and once again it was a lightning storm. And I had to go across this pointy, rocky, about 100 yards across there, and I didn't want to, but there was lightning out, and I was one of the tallest things around, and you can't see it in the picture here, but there was a tree behind me that was splintered. It just gotten hit, so apparently I made it through there. Next day, I came to Lehigh Gap. I crossed over there, and you can't tell from this picture, but it's really steep there, and it was really rocky. It had big rocks. I couldn't use my trekking poles. I had to scramble up using my hands. And when I first started up there, these two other guys came up right behind me, and I could hear them talking. When I got halfway up, the guy behind me said to the guy behind him, "Hey, watch what you grab onto. I almost put my hand on a copperhead." So I never saw that snake, but I probably did the same thing. The next night, I stayed at the shelter. Well, I stayed above the shelter. In the shelter was a man and a woman named Cinnabon. And when it got dark, it really got dark that night. I was up the hill somewhere by myself, and just about ready to fall asleep. And I thought I heard something out there, so what was that? And then I definitely heard something sniffing the air. And then that was followed by the scent of a wet dog I could smell. And so I was a little anxious about that. But then it went away and I fell asleep. And the next morning, I came down and had breakfast at the picnic table in front of the shelter, and Cinnabon says, "Hey, Box Turtle, did that bear come up to see you last night?" And I said, "I think it did." About that time, my wife decided she would come for a visit. But she didn't want to come alone. She was worried about driving that by herself. So she stopped in Akron and picked up our friend Wendy. And then the two of them found me somewhere around Delaware Water Gap. And then I drove us back to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We got some rooms for 3 nights. And Wendy, if she wasn't in the room, she was always tagging along with us. So I gave her the trail name of Chaperone. But Chaperone wasn't always with us. This is at High Point State Park in New Jersey. If you go in there and you show them that you're a thru hiker, they'll give you a free can of Pepsi, which I did. And then there was a drought going on at that time. So before I got out of New Jersey one afternoon, I came down onto this road, and there was this couple there. They were section hikers. They were putting their gear away in their trunk. And when I came out, the guy says, "Hey, are you a thru hiker?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "I don't have any pop, but would you like some water?" And I said, "Sure." So I went over to talk to him. And he said, "Boy, I'd like to hike with you." And so I said, "Well, come on." And to my surprise, he said, "Tammy, would you drive up another mile or so at the next crossroads and wait for me there? I want to walk with this guy." And he did. So it really boosted my ego. He had all these questions and brightened my day, and I was sad to see him leave. His name was Michael Tarvin. I'm into New York here, and this is another rock formation called the Lemon Squeezer. I had to take my pack off to get through there. There's the lowest elevation on the trails in New York. It's in Trailside Zoo. And the zoo there has all these animals that were injured. I believe it's in Bear Mountain State Park there. But before you get into that zoo, there's a really nice rolly section. Rolly, it has stone steps, and a lot of people like to work out there and walk through there. And I met another hiker. He didn't do the whole thing, but his trail name was Subway. He was a retired cop. He had a lot of stories. And one of them was that he and his wife walked in. One time she was hiking by herself late in the night, or late in the evening before it got dark, and she met up with these two thru hikers. And she was being a food tease. She was talking about pizza and beer, and they're saying, "Stop it, you're killing us." So she went home and told him, and he came back. He says, "I'm going to go find those guys, because in New York you're not supposed to hitchhike, and you're not supposed to stealth camp." But he says, "I know where they're going to be probably." So he went out and he bought pizzas and beers, and then he walked out there in the dark and he found these 2 tents, sure enough. So he put on his cop voice and he said, "All right, you guys, you're not supposed to be camping here. Get out of those tents right now." And the one guy says, "What?" He says, "You heard me, come out right now." He said, just a minute, I got to get dressed. He goes, I don't have all night, get out of here. So, well, they finally came out and he said, you want some pizza? After I went through the zoo, I crossed the Hudson River, I took a left on Route 6, and I climbed about a half a mile up the steep climb. It was hot and humid, and by the time I got up there, I was sweating. And I was looking ahead where I could camp so I could rinse off. And I found this place. It's called Spiritual Life Center. It's run by Franciscan monks, and thru hikers could camp there for free. So I went there, and I put my tent up by the Ball Diamond. They had a shelter house with electrical power, and they had a shower. So I got in line for the shower, had my supper, and at the end of the day, I'm looking for a place to hang my bear bag, my food bag. And I look across the field there, and I see this giant wooden cross, and I thought, that would be perfect, but it probably would have gotten us thrown out, so I didn't do that. I hung in a tree. Maybe like 5 days went by again, and I needed another hostel. And I looked ahead, and all the hostels seemed to be all booked up. But somebody mentioned this place. It's called Rustic River Cabins in Kent, Connecticut. So I didn't want to be locked out of that one. So I called early in the morning, as soon as I started hiking, and the wife answered. This couple had bought these like 10 years earlier. They were old hunting cabins, and I called real early, and I said, sorry I called so soon, so early. And she said, I'm going to punch you when I see you. And I said, okay. And then she said, I've got just the cabin for you. And I said, all right, see you later. And I thought, it was going to be a dump. But when I got there, she says, come on, let me show you your cabin. So I follow her, and we cross over this ravine on this beautiful little bridge, and there was the best privy I've ever seen. We go in this cabin, and it's rustic, but it's nice and clean. And this is out the back door. I've got this deck. It's overlooking the Housatonic River, and you can see my foot there. I'm kicking back. There's a beer and some pistachios there. The husband made us hamburgers that night, and it was a good night. A couple days later, I'm still alongside the Housatonic, and it's the end of the day. I'm all sweaty, and I want to rinse off. But so I stripped down to my black swimming trunks, and I went in and rinsed off before I got into my campsite. About that time, I was in Massachusetts then, and there was that one couple that you saw, Kettingers. They had been following me on my YouTube channel, and their daughter was in this area at North Adams serving an internship. And they contacted me and said, hey, we should get together. I'll take you out for supper. And I said, that sounds good. So we met in Dalton, Massachusetts. They took me out to Jacob's. I had the largest Reuben I've ever had, no problem. And then we went out for ice cream, and I had a large one there. Then I showed them where the trail was, so they took me there, and I dropped off cans of pop. I provided trail magic. I was a trail angel at that time. The next day, they got to go to this Mount Greylock, and this beautiful granite tower looks like a chess piece. They toured the inside of it, and I showed up a few days later because I was walking, and it was locked. I couldn't go in. It was like 4 o'clock, and I was just going to move on. But Venus came out of the lodge, and she says, hey, Box Turtle, they've got a bunkhouse upstairs in the lodge, and they got a real good restaurant. If you stay here tonight, you might be able to see that tower in the morning. So I did that. But it was still locked in the morning. I waited for over an hour, and I never got to see the inside. This is up in Muddy, Vermont. These are Cairns Gardens. A couple years ago, some do-gooder who really took the leave no trace behind seriously knocked them all down, but hikers have been rebuilding them. This is just below Killington Peak. I put my tent up, and I went up a little ways to the very top to make my wrap-up video, and as I was coming down, it started raining, and my hands were cold and wet, and I shook my hands, and my ring flew off. And I thought I was going to lose it in the rocks, so I was kind of frantic for about 5 seconds, but I found it, and my hands were getting thinner too, like I was. So I picked up and I jammed it on my middle finger and I left it there the rest of the hike. This is in Vermont, of the Connecticut River, and this is what a lot of young people did whenever there was a bridge and had deep enough water under it. I didn't do it because I didn't want to get hurt anymore. This is what the trail looked like sometimes. I said, this can't be right. Are you kidding me? Nope, that's it. There's a white blaze. That's the trail. I didn't think that was right either, but I see the blaze on the tree there. And I was happy this was not wet when I went over it, because if I would have slipped, I would have rolled a long ways. Down in the south, you have the valleys there are called gaps, but up north they're called notches. And down south, the trail goes up on switchbacks, up and down. But up in the New England, they go up and over. So here I am in the White Mountains. I'm on a presidential range. This is Mount Lafayette, and I see this stone structure, and I christened it Box Turtle Rock. Up there in the White Mountains, they don't have those three-sided shelters. They have lodges that they call huts, and they're very glad to give away the garbage, the leftover food they have, because anything that they have left over, they have to carry down, and they have to carry the other food back up on their backs. But they also had this deal called work for stay. You could help them out a bit and sleep on the floor, under the tables, and they'd give you some leftover food. But this was our first day doing it, and it was not a good deal. It's 9:30 at night here, and I'm scrubbing pots and pans. I had Mr. Zip take my picture, the guy I was hiking with at the time, and I told him if we had stayed in our tents, we would have been asleep 2 hours ago. These are the people who carried up the food and carried the garbage back down. They have these antique-looking pallet packs that they tie together, and you have to be really strong because some of those packs weigh 80 pounds. This is a sign before I got to Mount Washington, because the weather can change on a dime there. When I was up there, the wind was really fierce. There are 3 ways to get up there that I know of. You could drive your car up there, you could take one of these cog trains, or you can simply walk up like I did. Piece of cake. After this, I came to the Mahoosic Notch. It's supposed to be the most difficult mile on the whole trail, and it's essentially a ravine filled with boulders. And when I arrived at it, there was a young Sobo coming out, a southbounder, and I asked him, how long did it take you to get through there? And he said, I timed it. It took me 2 hours. So I'm thinking, well, great, it's going to take me 3 hours. But I didn't climb through it like most of them did. I stayed on top and I rock top. And it's kind of dangerous in a couple spots, but I made it through in 80 minutes. The next day was terrible again, ugly, dark. It was rainy, it was cold, and the higher up I got, the less people I saw. And this day was just like one of those depressing days. So early afternoon, I came out into a trailhead, and there was that woman, Mrs. Moose, and she had her car backed up to the trail. The hatchback was up. When I came down, and she said, I can't say it in her main accent, but she said, would you like a sandwich? I said, yes. So she made me a lunch meat sandwich and hot chocolate, and I put that away no time flat. And she said, would you like seconds? I said, sure. So she gave me some more, and I ate that, and she gave me some food to go. And that really hit the spot and boosted my ambition, brought me back to life. This is up in Kennebec in Maine. This is, they don't want you crossing the Kennebec River because people have drowned doing that. But if you're there between 10 and 2, this guy will come over and give you a ferry ride. It's free, but I left him a tip. After that, I arrived at Monson, Maine. It's the town before you get to the 100-mile wilderness. The 100-mile wilderness only has a couple access roads. They're owned by the lumber company, and you have to pay a toll if you want to use them. And about halfway through, there's no phone service, there's no resupply, so you have to carry 100 miles worth of food. Or at the Shaw's hostel where I stay, they offered a service where anything you put in a basket, they would deliver to you about the 60-mile mark. So I took advantage of that. But when I went to sleep that night, I weighed in at 139 pounds. I had lost 50 pounds. And my pack had been rubbing on small my back constantly, and it was really sore. And when I tried to lay on my back, it felt like I was laying on a golf ball. So I had to sleep on my side all night. And I should have gone to the doctor then, but next day I entered the 100-mile wilderness. And the people that were with me, they just took off. They were so happy, and I was dragging. I moved as fast as I could, but at the end of the day, there was an incident. It was probably an omen. I set my tent up on this bluff, and I wanted to wash off and make water down below. And there's a waterfall with a 30-foot drop over here, and I wanted to go up above it and rinse off. So when I went down there, the bedrock by the creek of the stream was on a slant, and I did not anticipate how slippery it was. There's probably algae on it, and the mist was coming up from the waterfall. So it caught me by surprise. When I stepped out on it, both my feet shot out from under me. I landed on my back in my sore spot, and I banged my head, and I was sliding towards the edge. I was going to go over the waterfall. So I was trying to create as much friction as I could to stop myself, and I did stop about 2 feet from the edge. So after a couple of deep breaths, I tried to scooch away from it using my heels and my elbows and my buttocks, and I eventually made it far enough away that I could stand up, and I walked upstream a little bit to make water. I rinsed off, and I cleaned the blood off my head, and that was my first night in the 100-mile wilderness. After that, I was slowing down. I wasn't getting the mileage I thought I would get, and I was worried I might not make my pickup date with Shaw's. Shaw's is run by a poet and his wife, hippie chick. So I was waiting for one of them to bring my package, but I didn't know if I was going to get there on time. So the day of my delivery, I got up at 1:30 in the morning, and I hiked through the night into the morning, and I arrived out on that road at 9 o'clock. And there I met this trail angel named Patriot. You know the routine. He sat me down, he served me, and eventually my basket arrived. But I was so tired, I sat there till noon. So after a 3 hours rest, I got up reluctantly and started walking again. The next day, it seemed like I was even slower. And as I was walking along, this young woman came along. She's my daughter's age, and her name was Real Nice. She was hiking the 100-mile wilderness and was going to carry on to Mount Katahdin. So we hit it off really well. We were exchanging stories, and I sat next to her next to a lake, and we had lunch. And then we continued on hiking, but eventually she either said I have to make water or I have to go to the bathroom or something. So I thought that was my cue. She wants to part ways. So I said, nice walking with you, Real Nice, and I left. And then later on that afternoon, around supper time, I came to this real steep part. And I started waddling up it, and I only got up about 2/3 of the way there, and I was out of gas. I was physically, mentally, and emotionally spent. It was a pretty sad moment for me, but I just stood there feeling sorry for myself, but eventually I felt strong enough. I made it to the top, but I was done. I was going to put up my tent there, and I just wanted to go to sleep. So as I was putting up my tent, this guy comes from over the side, and he says, you got to go over there 50 yards. There's a great view of Mount Katahdin. And I said, you're right, I'm not going to do that. So I put up my tent, and I got out my food bag, opened it up, and I didn't warm up the water this time. I just poured cold water in there, and I didn't wait for it to soften up. I just ate it cold and crunchy, and I just wanted to go to sleep. But I said, I got to go see that picture. So I went over there, and that's the picture I took, and it's on the cover of my second book, Trail Magic. So I went to sleep hoping to feel better in the morning, but I didn't feel better. The next day, I was barely moving, but I ended up at Rainbow Spring Campgrounds, and I think there was a nice place down below that people were going to, but I didn't want to go down there. I was too tired. I just put my tent up on the side here, and I crawled into it. I didn't eat that night, and I didn't hang my bear bag. I just wanted to sleep, so I crawled in there, and just when I got in there, half the tent blew down. So I had to climb back out, and I found more rocks, and I stacked them up, and I crawled back in, and my hands were so cold, I put them in my mommy sleeping bag onto my thighs, and my left side felt normal, but my right side was on fire, and my leg felt like bubble wrap. So it dawned on me, I have an infection. That's why I have this fever. That's why I feel so lousy. I need to get to the hospital. But I had 11.8 miles to go before I came out on the Golden Road. Next morning, I just start walking, and Real Nice appeared. She took one look at me, and she said, I'm going to walk with you today. You don't look so good. I said, okay. So she did. She walked with me, and we got finally about a mile from the road, and she says, I'm going to go get some food. I'm going to run down the store there at the Ebal Bridge and get you some food. What would you like? And I said, pop and chips and ice cream. So she took off running with her backpack on. When I got on the road, I see her hustling back. She's got bags of goodies hanging from her wrist, and she's holding a bowl of ice cream in each hand. And she said, take one, I'm going to eat the other one. So I ate that very quickly. And then I started in on the pop and chips, and then she says, let me see your hitchhiking sign. I want to see if I can make it work. So about that, during that whole time, I never saw a vehicle, I never heard a car, there was nothing out there. It was like an abandoned road. But just then, I hear this diesel engine coming, and it got louder, and then pretty soon this black pickup truck came around the corner and downshifted and stopped right in front of us. And Real Nice opened the door and says, can you take us to the Millinocket Hospital? And he said, sure, I'm heading that way, hop in. So we hopped in. He had all kinds of stories, and I said, and he said, the only reason he was there at that moment and that time was he was out of cigarettes. So I said, normally I'm against smoking, but I'm glad you're a smoker today. So he dropped us off at the hospital there, and they took me in, and Real Nice came in and called my wife, let her know what was going on, and she stayed with me until the ambulance came, and they took me on a 3-hour ride to Portland Hospital. And eventually, after I got there, about 1 o'clock in the morning, they cut me open and drained the infection and put antibiotics in my lower back there and stuffed it with this long piece of gauze and covered it up. And the hospital was so crowded that when the sun came up, they kicked me out. So I got a taxi ride to a hotel and called my wife. And once again, she got a hold of Wendy and drove there. And then they both flew to see me. And that night, even though they said, you have to change that every day, but don't get it wet. So at that time, I was bracing myself, and she was tugging on it, and it started bleeding. And by the time she got that all the way out, the blood was rolling down my leg. So she called the hospital and said, does he need to come back? And they said, no, put the antibiotic in, stuff the more gauze in, and cover it up like it was. But next time, you're allowed to get it wet when you pull it out, so stand in the shower or something. And the next day or two, she had convinced me to come home where she could help me out better than in that hotel room. So I came home for 2 weeks, and eventually I felt better, enough to finish the last 15 miles. So I went back. In Millinocket there's the Appalachian Trail Lodge. It's run by a man named Old Man, and his daughter's hippie chick. So the next morning, he took me to where I left off, and I walked 10 miles to Cotton Stream Campground. And then they came and got me. And when I got back, I wanted to settle up my bill and get my shuttles lined up. And when I saw Old Man, I told him that, and he says, oh, it's all covered. I said, no, yesterday when I came here, the credit card wasn't working right, the credit card machine, I still owe you. And he goes, just a minute. So he went in the other room, and he came out this piece of paper, and he said, do you know this man named Michael Tarvin? And I said, I don't think so. And he said, yeah, he hiked with you in New Jersey. And I said, oh yeah, I know him. He says, well, he paid for everything. He covered it. I said, wow. So I called up Michael and thanked him. And the next morning, I got a ride back to Katahdin Stream Campground. I thought it was going to be anticlimactic, but it was a beautiful day. And it started off easy, and then it got steeper, and then I got the big boulders again. I climbed over that, and once I got over those, it was like a mile or so left. I could see the finish line. I could see the iconic brown sign off in the distance, and there was a bunch of hikers already up there milling around. So as I walked there, I thought of every mountain that I had climbed to get to that one. I had hiked in 14 states, and I had done the equivalent of climbing Mount Everest 16 and a half times. So on the way there, I made a video to my grandchildren, hoping to inspire them someday. And then I did what I promised I said I would do to myself, for myself. I put in my earbuds and I listened to my one song I wanted to hear was Mason Williams' Classical Gas. And then, as I got closer, the people around me, they applauded me. And I walked up and touched the sign and said 4 words. And then I climbed on top and got several pictures taken. I only had 90 minutes to cover 2,200 miles. So if you would like more details, you can check out my YouTube channel. It's free to the public. I don't make a cent on it. But you'll get more stories and information from there.
Do you have any questions?
Thanks for coming. Do you have any questions? Yes.
The fair from '04 hiked northbound back then. The Jerry team, Miss Janet.
Miss Janet?
Yeah, she's one of the famous trail angels.
I don't remember that.
She's hostel on her own. Now she just does a van up and down.
Oh, is she the coffee lady?
She just has a shuttle van. All she does is just every year just shuttles people up and down the trail.
I'll probably see her when I watch for them on the Facebook channel this year.
If you go to Trail Days, you'll find her.
Okay, I probably saw her there.
Are you going this year?
I went in 19. Took the wife and marched in the parade. Yes?
Would you do it again knowing what you know and what you went through? No offense, you're a tough old bird.
If I were to do it again at that age, I would have taken a day off once a week because I missed probably about a month due to injuries. So if I had just taken a day off during the week, I would have enjoyed it more. I think now if I were to do it, I would just slack pack and I would stay at a hostel every night, get shuttled around.
What was your inspiration? Was it a person or was it Boy Scouts or what made you do that?
I kept seeing information on it, and at first I thought I would do a southern hike and I'd walk up with the trees changing, but I probably saw something in Outdoor Life or maybe Life Mags. One of the things was my dad showed me when I was little this Life magazine. There was this guy, he always listened to people who said, I wish I had done that when I was younger. So this guy made a list and he was marking off. I remember he high jumped 5 feet and he ran a 5-minute mile and he showed him he was canoeing down the Amazon or something, but that's the way to do it. Most of the people who hiked were either 60-year-olds or 20-year-olds who just got out of college or 40-year-olds who just got out of the surface.
People with a career don't have the time to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, you know, it might be a better way to go is the section hiker, like that Michael Tarvin. He's way over halfway done. He's been doing it for years. You can go home whenever you want. When times are bad, I would tell myself, well, you ran cross country for 5 years, you can do anything. Or my grandparents had it harder than me, but the other one was, it's not like I got drafted, I'm getting shot at every day. I could go home anytime I want. but I knew I'd never forgive myself if I did. So, and I wasn't just doing it for me.
Was there a particular segment that you enjoyed the most? I mean,
Did you see that food picture? I like civilization. When I came home, I used to just stand in front of the refrigerator and let the cold air hit my feet and just stare at the refreshments. Or I'd go up in the middle of the afternoon and just take a shower because I could. One time I was leaving the Kroger store and I'm thinking, I'll be home in 15 minutes, but if I was walking, it'd take me half the day. But I got more patient. I think that wore off though.
What did you do before you retired?
I was an electrician. And that last year, the training that I did it on work. Whenever somebody needed some material brought up, I'd volunteer. So I'd use my leg muscles, I'd go down the steps, and I'd carry up a bundle of conduit, and I'd carry it back up. They were paying me to train.
How long did you plan your trip? When did you first decide that you wanted to do it?
Probably a couple years. When I put it on the bucket list, I could have used more research. And if I didn't have a Facebook at that time, if I had the Facebook and I knew about the Appalachian Trail site on there, I would have known where all the trail magic was. Because people were talking about having it 3 times a day, and I kept missing it. I'd go down into a gap and I'd sniff the air, and expecting to smell bacon and eggs. Didn't happen very often. One thing I noticed about myself, somebody asked that question, what did you learn about yourself? That was, my teeth are more crooked than I ever knew looking at my videos.
Hey, Louis, how many pair of boots did you go to?
3. The first one I made 1,000 miles, but then I bought a new pair in Front Royal, and when I went to Rocky, Pennsylvania, it just tore them up. So. Some people go through a lot more, but I push it to the limit.
Did you expect to lose that much weight on that trail?
No.
It's a lot of weight.
They say the women, when they're all done, they look like they've been at the gym all the time, but the guys look like they were in a concentration camp. I lost 50 pounds in that amount of time, but I put it back on in 10 weeks.
Ice cream.
Hey, Louis, how many actual days did you walk the trail?
From day 1 to day 177, but I think it was close to like 140 something. So I was probably averaging 15 miles a day, about 5 months. There's people always there trying to race and see how fast they could do it, but some people said the last one to Katahdin's the winner. So they would say, I couldn't wait for it to be over, but I never wanted it to end.
Well, thanks again so much, Louis.
Thank you.